Welcome back to You've Made a Mobile App, Now What?
Welcome back to our next section in Module 2 on our community connection, which is getting your message out there. Now here is something that is really important. You need to get your message out there. You not only need to tell people that you have a mobile app, but you have to give them a reason to keep it on their phone, and you need to tell them why you have a mobile app. People will often buy what you do more so than what you do. And so getting your message out there is critical, and there's different ways to do this. So let's talk about podcasts a little bit. They're becoming very popular, and it seems that a lot of people want to start getting information from podcasts. One thing that I do know is that a podcast that runs anywhere from 20 to 30 minutes is a good length of a show to have. That's kind of the commute time and when a lot of people are listening to these. And if you're going to have one dedicated just to your business, you always want to bring up that you do have a mobile app, and also don't forget to link your podcast within the mobile app so that people can listen to the other different sessions that you have, all the different shows that you have. But in your shows specifically, talk about the problem that your app solves. You don't want to necessarily talk about how that's solved, but you want to talk about the problem that it solves. Because this is very important that people have a reason to put your app on their phone. And it's going to be that you're solving a problem, you're making their life easier, you're inviting them to stay connected with you. And especially if you do have that podcast on your app, that right there is a great reason for people to have you as a resource on their phone. So make sure that you do really clearly define the problem that not only your app solves, but also what your business solves and how it's going to benefit your audience. So let's talk about hosting your own podcast. One thing that we clearly did talk about is that you always want to be talking about the problem that you're going to be solving for people, and the solution is going to be something that you don't want to give very specific details about, but basically what you want to do is you want to share what the results are going to be, so that you do attract people in there. And when you do host your own podcast, you want to make sure that you keep that with conversation that is often around your business, but more importantly, that's going to bring significant value to your listeners. You don't want to give the same message over and over again, because then people are not going to want to come back to you. They've heard your message and now they're ready to move on. So when you are hosting your own podcast, make sure to keep it fresh, keep it lively. And one way that you can do that is you can invite guests who have a similar audience to yours to be part of the podcast and share some experiences and share good value with your audience. The other thing that's nice about inviting guests is that they will share this with their audience, that they are on your podcast. And it's something that you can send out over and over again and use this in social media, have it on your website, have it within your app. Definitely you can have your podcast being right within your app. And it's a way to keep the content fresh and to keep people coming back. And you also want to have shows that will just highlight your app. You want to give specific features that are there, or possibly even some information that you have shared, or even just a simple, how-to. Why, again, do people want to keep your app on their phone? That is something that is extremely important and something to be embraced. Is why do people want to have your app on their phone? Is because you're going to keep giving them good content. So when you are hosting your podcast, make sure to hit upon all of those things and make it worth the time for your audience to keep coming back. Let's talk about guest podcasting and what that all means. First of all, to be a guest on a podcast is basically you're, again, going to be leveraging other people's audiences to get your message out. And when you are looking to be a guest on a podcast, there's some certain things that you definitely do want to be aware of. And one of the biggest things is the podcast itself is what kind of following do they have? How many followers are listening to them regularly? And how do they promote that? And will they be promoting you along the way? One thing that's really nice about podcasting, whether it's your own or if you're a guest, is that it's something that is typically around for a long time, reusable. You can repurpose the content, and you can also change these podcasts into blog articles and feature them on your website. So there's a lot of positives of being a guest on a podcast, especially if you're not ready to have your own show at this time. And when you're doing this, you want to make sure that you look for a host that has a similar audience as you do. And that way you can spread the word a lot faster. And you can also bring value to their podcast, which is something that I know they're going to be looking for. So being a guest on a podcast can be very, very powerful, especially if you don't have your own show at this point. And you want to look for topics which match your app. You want to be in an arena where people are going to want to hear what you have to say. So you can leverage this in many, many different ways and very economical. Some podcasters do charge you to be on their show, but others, most of them don't. They're always looking for audiences to share messages. They're always looking for guests to share messages, I should say. And they're always looking for new things to share with their audience. So give guest podcasting a shot. So now it's your turn to become a public speaker. And there are many, many areas where you can do some public speaking and you can get engagements and you can share your wisdom. And sharing your wisdom on a larger stage allows you to talk to more people at one time. It's one to many to get your message out there. And there's also power and energy in a room that speaks to you of what you're actually trying to solve, the problem that you're trying to solve. And you can do this in several different areas. You can do this at conferences. You can do this as just a simple panel discussion, and you can do presentations to either small or large groups or different organizations. And when you're doing this, you want to make sure that you're clearly talking about the problem that you're going to solve with your app. And you don't always want to be talking app, because people are going to not completely embrace that idea. But when you talk about the problem and then you kind of talk a little bit about the outcome for people doing business with you. Remember, your app is nothing more than a marketing tool that you want to get people to do business with you. It's a way for people to do business in the 21st century. And you can do this by just speaking from the stage and telling people about your message and what it is you bring to the table. So whether you're talking to a large group or a small group, just make sure that you're talking to the right type of an audience. Let's talk about some public speaking places that you can find. A lot of them will be for free. You'll be donating your time. However, you're trying to get people to do business with you. You're trying to get them not only to download your app, but ultimately buy your product and do business with you. So some of the easiest spots to do, or the low-hanging fruit, is to just start speaking at some local groups. Once you start with one group, it's amazing how much that's going to start gravitating into other groups. People talk, they belong to more than one group, and when they hear a good public speaker, they share it with the other groups that they are in, and you are ultimately asked to speak eventually all over town. And through that, you can also look at some chambers. And what's really nice about the chambers is, again, a lot of them have group where multiple chambers are coming together, and you're trying to do that one to many. But when you do a good job, other places will want to ask you to speak as well. And you can also look at some business groups. There's some small groups, there's some larger groups, and you never know who's in the audience that's going to try to introduce you to somebody else and to get you to start speaking a little bit more. And you can also look at some volunteer groups, women's clubs, Kiwanis's, Rotarians, those kind of places as well. And one thing that I've known to really become an expert in your field, local groups are wonderful and great spot to start and to try out your speech and to get it all clear and really tight so that you know what you're saying. But if you can speak 100 miles or more away from your hometown, it's amazing how your expertise is now elevated. You are now looked upon as the authority within your field, and you're given a lot more credibility at that time. So give that some consideration when you're looking for public speaking events, is to leave outside of the confines of your area. So we've talked about the podcasting and being a guest and having guests on your show. And we've also talked about being on a stage where you want to do the same thing. You want to be invited onto other people's stages, or you also want to invite people onto your stage. But what we really want to talk about here is the last topic on getting your message out is inviting the community into your space. And this way, you're going to be using the leverage of all these different audiences to pull them into your space and to collaborate with people. And one of the things that you can do easily is to host your own summit, whether it's a virtual summit or if it's a summit that is a physical spot where you're gathering people together. And what a summit does is it basically brings people with a specific topic, and there's a thread of commonality through the topics, but they touch on different things that can all help the audience or the small business owner, or whether it is the general public, to come on in, and each person at the summit is given the opportunity to speak on their area of expertise. But you're the host, so you're constantly being seen. You're doing possibly some interviewing of these people in between their presentations. A summit is a great way to get a lot of people to just come together. And what you want to do, really, that's the most important part, is to align with the businesses that have a related messaging. You want to make sure that your message clearly goes along with their messaging. You don't want to invite people in, say, for financial, and you're trying to actually sell sweets at a bakery, because they don't really completely align together. But you can always look for a thread, and they don't have to be identical topics. They just have to align with each other. For example, I did a summit with two other people where one was branding, one was websites, and then I talked about mobile apps. And there's definitely a clear thread throughout all of that. So make sure you definitely do align. And you can use video chat or social media calendars through your app to help advertise that you are having this. So it gives people another reason to download your app onto their phone, but you are also giving them value. And you can utilize these types of features, the video chat, social media calendars. You can take care of all of these things through your app. This completes our section on getting your message out there. Now, please continue on to Network on Purpose.